Hello, friends. Welcome to the Book Compass. Today, we'll explore the 3-Minute Rule by Brant Pinvidic. On the day Lavish secured his company's third major client meeting, he felt this could be the most significant project of his career. However, the pressure was immense. The company's future hinged on this presentation, but his thoughts were all over the place. Every attempt to refine his pitch only seemed to make it more complicated, as more details kept creeping in. That night, exhausted and frustrated, he sat at his small study table, sipping coffee. His gaze landed on a pile of books, and as he reached out, one slipped and fell. The 3-Minute Rule: say less to get more from any pitch or presentation. He picked up the book and casually flipped through the pages. Prioritize simplicity over excessive details. This was the title of the first chapter. Lavish smiled. This is exactly what I need. As he read further, one line stood out. Eliminate unnecessary complexity. He paused for a moment, deep in thought. This is it, he told himself. The biggest issue with my presentation is that I keep adding unnecessary details. Brant Pinvidic explained that audiences grasp core ideas quickly, but excessive details dilute their focus. Lavish recalled how his team had reacted during practice sessions. Too much information, boss. At the time, he hadn't given it much importance. But now, he realized he had been making a critical mistake. The next morning, he opened his presentation and examined every slide. This has turned into a 15-minute monologue. Who's going to sit through that? He muttered to himself. Then he underlined a powerful line from the book. Clarity emerges when you remove the unnecessary. Lavish pulled out the most crucial points from his presentation and gathered his entire team. All right, guys, we're scrapping everything and focusing only on what truly matters, he announced. Some team members looked surprised. But sir, won't the client need to know these details? One of them asked. Lavish smiled. If I'm getting confused by my own presentation, imagine how the client will feel listening to it. Trust me, simplicity is key. Gradually, the presentation started taking shape. What was once a list of 100 points had now been refined to just 25. Lavish kept asking his team the same question. Can we convince the client in just 3 minutes? That was the turning point. Cut the clutter. 2 days later, during the final practice session, Lavish reviewed every slide. Each one was now clear, concise, and impactful. He closed his laptop with a sense of satisfaction. This feels like the perfect climax, he thought. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. Tension filled the client's boardroom, but Lavish remained composed. He delivered his entire pitch in just 3 minutes. The people in the room were visibly impressed. After the meeting, the client approached him and said, I really appreciate how direct and simple your pitch was. Most presentations are overloaded with unnecessary details, but this was refreshing. Internally, Lavish felt a deep sense of happiness. He had experienced the power of simplicity firsthand. He noted in his diary, the audience doesn't need every detail, they need the essence. Feeling accomplished, he turned to the next chapter of the 3-Minute Rule. The journey has just begun, he thought. Let's see what's next. That evening in the office, Lavish felt noticeably more confident after his successful pitch. But he also knew that growth was an ongoing process. He picked up the book again and moved on to the next chapter, used the WHSE method. The first line immediately caught his attention. Pinvidic explained that the easiest way to craft a powerful pitch was by structuring it around 4 key pillars. 1. W. What is your offer? 2. H. How does it work? 3. S. Should they trust you? 4. Can you execute it? WSE. It sounds simple, Lavish murmured to himself, but soon he realized there was more to it than met the eye. Lavish realized the power of the WHSE method. All right, he thought. Let's apply this to my next pitch. The following week, he had an even bigger presentation lined up for a new potential client. If successful, this deal could secure a long-term partnership for his company. But this time, Lavish was determined not to repeat his past mistakes. He grabbed a whiteboard and wrote WHSE in bold letters. Then he asked himself the first question: what is your offer? Lavish began jotting down the core idea of his product. Initially, he used elaborate language and complex details. Then a line from the book came to mind. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. That was his cue. He refined his message until it was clear and direct. We provide AI-driven customer support solutions that reduce response time and enhance customer satisfaction. Perfect. Now, the product's purpose was crystal clear. Next came the second question. How does it work? This part was tricky. Lavish was used to diving into technical explanations, but this time he decided to take a different approach. He turned to his team's technical lead and asked, "If you had to explain this product in just 3 sentences, what would you say?" After some brainstorming, the team came up with a response. The AI scans customer queries, categorizes them, and automatically generates accurate, context-aware responses. It seamlessly integrates with existing CRM systems. They wrote this answer on the whiteboard. Then Lavish stepped back and asked, "Will a non-technical person understand this?" The answer was yes. Now on to the third question. Should they trust you? Providing validation was the toughest part. Winning the client's confidence was crucial. To strengthen his pitch, Lavish gathered testimonials and case studies from previous satisfied clients. While reviewing one of his case studies, Lavish found that a client had reported a 40% faster response time and a 25% increase in customer satisfaction. That's solid proof, he thought. He then condensed the testimonials, making them concise and impactful for the pitch. The final question remained, can you execute it? Demonstrating feasibility was crucial. Lavish called in his operations head. "Give me a realistic timeline and resource estimate," he requested. "If the client approves, we can begin implementation within 4 weeks," the operations head responded. Lavish knew that simply stating, "we can do it," wouldn't be enough. To reinforce his credibility, he created a step-by-step implementation plan, ensuring the client would have a clear understanding of how execution would unfold. Now, his pitch had a structured, logical flow thanks to the whiteboard framework. He finalized the key points and wrote them down. AI-powered customer support for faster responses and improved satisfaction. Seamless integration with CRM systems. Proven results, 40% faster responses, 25% higher satisfaction. When he presented the structured pitch to his team, everyone agreed. It was the clearest and most well-organized version they had ever seen. The big day. On the day of the presentation, Lavish felt a hint of nervousness as he walked into the meeting room with the client's team. But the moment he started speaking, everything clicked into place. He followed the WHSC method step by step, ensuring each point was clear and impactful. As he spoke, he noticed the client's representatives nodding in agreement. When he outlined the step-by-step implementation plan, the client's lead manager smiled and said, "You've really thought this through. It's clear that you know exactly what you're doing." By the end of the meeting, the client immediately scheduled a follow-up call for the next discussion. As Lavish walked out of the conference room, he felt a surge of confidence. The power of simplicity had once again proven its worth. Lavish reflected on how the WHSC method had taken his pitch clarity to the next level. He jotted down a thought in his diary. Logical flow builds trust. When you address key questions up front, you eliminate doubts. That evening at home, he turned to the next chapter of the 3-minute rule. "Wow, every lesson is better than the last," he thought. "Let's see what's next." A new realization. Later that evening, while sitting in his office, Lavish decided to review recordings of his last 2 presentations. The first time, he had learned that simplicity should be prioritized over excessive details, but he often had to clarify parts of his pitch afterward. The second time, using the WHSE method, his pitch had become structured and logical. But now something stood out. He had overlooked a crucial aspect in both presentations. He hadn't openly addressed potential weaknesses or challenges. Lavish recalled a moment from his last meeting. A client representative had casually asked, "It all sounds great, but have you considered the potential challenges?" At the time, he had given a quick response. But now he realized that avoiding this question could weaken his credibility. Determined to improve, he opened the next chapter of the 3-minute rule. Address negatives proactively. The very first line struck him. Acknowledging weaknesses is more effective than hiding them. It shows honesty and builds trust. At first, This approach felt risky. If we openly discuss our weaknesses, won't that make the client doubt us? He wondered. But then another line in the book changed his perspective. Transparency builds credibility, while hiding weaknesses creates lavish nodded. Let's test this approach. A new strategy. The next day, he called a team meeting. Guys, in our next presentation, we're not just going to highlight our strengths. We'll also proactively address our weaknesses, he announced. Some team members looked puzzled. But sir, if we bring up the weaknesses ourselves, won't that make the client think we're unreliable? One of them asked. Lavish smiled and responded casually. Hiding weaknesses doesn't solve the problem, Lavish continued. But if we proactively address potential risks and challenges, the client will see that we've thought through every angle. This builds trust. His team nodded in understanding. Now it was time to brainstorm. Identifying challenges and solutions. Our biggest challenge is scalability, the technical head pointed out. If a client's data grows too fast, our system may take time to adapt in the initial stages. Lavish immediately wrote on the whiteboard, Scalability challenge. So, how do we solve this? He asked. The operations head suggested, we can implement a hybrid model, providing manual support in the initial phase while gradually increasing automation. Perfect, Lavish said. Now, instead of presenting this as a weakness, we'll frame it as a strength. Next, they tackled cost effectiveness, another potential concern. The team discussed how higher initial costs could be justified through long-term ROI benefits. Lavish then structured their findings using a refined WHSE-like framework, scalability challenge, hybrid model, manual support at first, then gradual automation. Initial cost concern, detailed ROI analysis to showcase long-term savings, system integration challenges, dedicated support team for smooth onboarding. Now, their pitch was fully prepared. To ensure they delivered it with confidence, Lavish conducted a mock presentation with his team. This time, instead of avoiding weaknesses, they addressed every concern head-on with clarity and conviction. The presentation. On the big day, Lavish began by outlining the product's strengths and key offerings. But then he paused and said, now I'd like to talk about the potential challenges of our product. We believe that no solution is perfect, and instead of hiding limitations, we prefer to discuss them openly. He explained the scalability challenge and immediately followed up with the hybrid solution his team had developed. Lavish also maintained transparency on ROI, explaining why the initial cost was higher, but how it would generate long-term benefits. The client's team listened carefully. After the presentation, a senior member commented, "This is refreshing. Most people try to hide flaws, but your approach shows that you've thought things through. It gives us confidence." Lavish felt a deep sense of satisfaction. As he left the meeting, he reflected on the power of transparency. That evening, he wrote in his diary, "Acknowledging flaws isn't a weakness, it's a strength. It shows honesty, planning, and preparedness." A new challenge. Later that night, Lavish sat alone in his office. Light rain tapped gently against the window, creating a rhythmic ticking sound. He opened his client feedback report on his laptop. The overall feedback was positive, but one particular comment caught his attention. The presentation was great, but it lacked an inspiring story. That phrase kept running through his mind. Polished slides, structured delivery, yet something was missing. He scratched his head, murmuring to himself, "I worked so hard on the design and execution, so why this feedback?" At that moment, his eyes fell on the 3-minute rule lying on his desk. Curious, he flipped to the next chapter. It read, "Flawless presentations can only take you so far. A clear, relatable story trumps everything. Audiences connect emotionally, not with polished slides, but with real narratives." These words struck him. Storytelling. He whispered the word to himself. That's when he realized his presentations focused too much on technical details and design, but lacked a compelling story. Where does the story come from? The next day, he gathered his team. "Guys, have we ever thought about creating a campaign story for our product?" Lavish asked. Some team members looked puzzled. "A story? But we're selling AI solutions, not making a movie," the marketing head chuckled. Lavish smiled. "Exactly. But if we present our product as a story instead of just throwing statistics at clients, won't they connect with it more? He paused and then added, imagine instead of just sharing numbers, we show how this solution has transformed businesses and impacted real people. Making the solution real. The team started brainstorming. Then the technical head spoke up. Remember when one of our clients was struggling with an overwhelmed customer support team? They used our AI solution and automatically resolved 60 tickets in no time. Lavish's eyes lit up. Exactly. That's our story. We can make it relatable and emotional so the audience truly connects with it. He grabbed a whiteboard marker and wrote, Step 1, identify the problem. The business was drowning in customer complaints. The support team was overwhelmed. Response times were delayed, leading to frustration. Customer satisfaction was dropping. Lavish decided to keep the story simple and relatable. No unnecessary data dumps, no flashy graphs. If the audience can see themselves in the story, we've won half the battle, he thought. The story over style. The next day, the team did a mock presentation. They stripped away fancy animations and focused entirely on the narrative. The marketing head hesitated. But the slides looked too plain, he pointed out. Lavish smiled. Simple doesn't mean boring. Simple means clear. The pitch that one presentation day arrived. The client's team gathered in the boardroom. Lavish began. His first slide contained just one sentence. What if your team could focus on what truly matters? Then he jumped straight into the story. He narrated the client's struggles as if they were experiencing them in real time. He watched their faces closely. Everyone was engaged. When he reached the climax, revealing the solution and its impact, one of the clients in the room leaned forward and said, "This sounds exactly like the challenge we're facing." After the meeting, the client awarded the project to Lavish's firm. While shaking hands, the client said, "Your story helped us understand the solution better than anything else." A lesson in structure. That evening, as rain tapped against his window, Lavish sat down with his diary and wrote, "Stories resonate. People don't just buy solutions, they buy the transformation those solutions promise." Though the weather outside was still cloudy, his thoughts had never been clearer. He flipped open the 3-minute rule and began reading the next chapter. Let's see what's next, he thought. The next challenge. Lavish was preparing for a new project. The last lesson, Story Trumps Style, had transformed his pitch completely. Now he truly understood that a relatable and engaging story mattered more than flashy design. But this time, the challenge was even greater. He not only had to craft a powerful campaign story, but also present it in a clear and structured way, one that would immediately drive action from the client. As he turned the page, the next lesson emerged. Follow the 3-part timeline. The book explained. Organize your pitch into 3 clear phases. Align each phase with how your audience naturally processes information. This ensures maximum engagement. Lavish leaned back and thought, makes sense, but how do I implement it practically? Breaking it down. He took out his notebook and jotted down the 3 key phases. 1, conceptualize. 1 minute. Define the core idea clearly and concisely. 2, contextualize. 1:30 to 30 min. Provide relevant context and real-world examples. 3, actualize. 2:33 min. Show them exactly what to do next. Lavish immediately realized something. In previous presentations, he often got lost in details too early. Clients would be interested at the start, but by the time he reached actionable steps, their attention had faded. Maybe this is why some pitches didn't land the way I expected, he thought. Determined to fix this, he called his team together. Guys, this time we're structuring our pitch in 3 phases. Let's make every second count. Mastering the 3-minute pitch. In the first 90 seconds, we'll define the idea in the simplest way possible. The next 60 seconds will focus on its importance and relevance. And in the final 30 seconds, we'll outline clear action steps, Lavish explained to his team. The technical lead raised a concern. But sir, how will all this fit into just 3 minutes? Lavish smiled. That's the challenge. We have to trim everything down to the essentials. The rest can be discussed in Q&A. Refining the pitch. They got to work. Conceptual phase. Defining the idea. We need to present our product so clearly that anyone can grasp it within 90 seconds, Lavish said. The first draft was technical. Our solution automates repetitive customer interactions. But Lavish wanted a more engaging hook. Imagine if your team could focus on creative projects instead of repetitive tasks. That's relatable, Vish said. Contextual phase, 30 to 30 men. Explaining relevance. Lavish added, now we show why this matters. We'll share how one of our clients saved 40 hours a week and improved employee engagement. Actualization phase, 2, driving action. We need to make next steps feel effortless, Lavish said. The marketing head suggested, we can say, just book a demo session and see how this works for you. Perfect, Lavish said. Practice makes perfect. The team rehearsed the pitch. The first attempt felt rushed. Lavish reassured them, we'll refine it with practice. Every word should count. After 3 days of fine-tuning, the pitch became crisp and impactful. The big moment. On the day of the presentation, Lavish stepped forward with confidence. He began with one powerful sentence. Imagine if your team could save 40 hours a month by automating repetitive tasks. The room leaned in. The 3-minute rule was in action. The final test, mastering the 3-minute rule. As Lavish wrapped up his pitch, he delivered his final words with confidence. All you have to do is book a demo session and we'll show you how it works. The meeting ended. A senior member of the client's team leaned forward and said, your pitch was so clear and structured. It didn't waste our time, and we know exactly what to do next. That day, Lavish truly understood the power of simplicity and structure. He went home, opened his diary, and wrote, the audience doesn't want to be overwhelmed. They want clarity and direction. Give them the confidence to act. Lavish was nearing the final stage of his journey. Every lesson from the 3-minute rule had not only transformed his professional life, but also reshaped his mindset. Before starting the last chapter, he took a moment to reflect on his key learnings. 1. Simplicity over detail. Complex ideas must be presented in a simple, clear way. 2. The W-check method. Logical flow makes a pitch structured and compelling. 3. Addressing negatives proactively. Acknowledging weaknesses builds trust. 4. Story trumps style. A well-told story is more powerful than flashy design. 5. Follow the 3-part timeline. A pitch must have clear phases: concept, context, and action. But Lavish knew that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. He wrote in his notebook, each lesson is a building block. If I connect them correctly, my foundation will be unbreakable. The ultimate challenge. 1 week later, Lavish faced his biggest test yet, a pitch for a partnership with a multinational corporation. The challenge? The competition was intense. The decision makers were tough. This was the ultimate test of his team's ability. Lavish gathered his team. He looked at them with determination. This pitch is not just another business opportunity, he said. It's our moment to prove everything we've learned. Every lesson we've mastered, we need to apply it now. Step 1. Simplicity over detail. Lavish reminded his team. First, we focus on the core idea. Everything else follows. The final test had begun. The ultimate test, mastering the perfect pitch. Lavish stood before his team, focused and determined. Whatever we say, it must be so simple that the client understands it instantly. With that, they began brainstorming and refined their central message, empowering businesses to focus on innovation by automating their most important tasks. Step 1, the VHC method, structuring the pitch. Lavish structured the pitch using the VHC framework, breaking it into 4 key pillars. What is our offering? Clear and concise explanation of the product. How does it work? Step-by-step demonstration with real-world examples. Why does it matter? The impact on efficiency, growth, and ROI. Where can you see it in action? Validation through case studies and testimonials. For each section, Lavish ensured clarity, reinforcing credibility with data-driven insights. Step 2, turning weaknesses into strengths. One of the team members hesitated. Our pricing is higher than our competitors. Won't that be a deal breaker? Lavish smiled and replied, why are you looking at this as a weakness? We'll make it a strength. Instead of defending the cost, he justified it with a focus on value. Yes, our pricing is higher, but here's why. Our solution delivers results faster, requires less maintenance, and guarantees scalability for the future. With us, you're not just buying software, you're investing in sustainability and long-term success. Step 3, the power of storytelling. Lavish knew that data alone wouldn't be enough. They needed a compelling story. He crafted a narrative around the client's pain points, making the solution feel personal and urgent. Imagine a world where your employees spend hours on repetitive tasks. Now imagine if they could spend that time innovating, collaborating, and driving growth instead. He made the problem relatable and the solution irresistible. Step 4, the 3-part timeline, clear and actionable. To ensure clarity, Lavish structured the presentation using the 3-minute rule. 1, conceptual, first 90 seconds. Clearly define the core idea. 2, contextual, next 60 seconds. Explain why it matters using real-world scenarios. 3, actual, final 30 seconds. Provide actionable next steps so the client knows what to do immediately. The big pitch. The day of the presentation arrived. The client's decision makers sat in the conference room, waiting. Lavish breathed deeply and began. Imagine a world where your team works smarter, not harder. From the first sentence, the room was hooked. Lavish presented with a perfect balance of storytelling, data, and structure. He delivered the pitch with confidence, addressing every concern before it was even raised. When the presentation ended, the senior decision maker leaned forward and said, your pitch was one of the most structured and engaging ones we've ever seen. We know exactly what you offer, why it matters, and how we can move forward. Lavish and his team won the project. The real lesson. As his team celebrated their victory, Lavish took a moment of reflection. He had come a long way, from struggling with complex pitches to mastering clarity, structure, and persuasion. That night, he wrote in his diary, a great pitch isn't about sounding smart, it's about making others feel smart. Clarity wins. And with that, he turned the final page of the 3-minute rule, not as a student, but as a master of its principles. A journey of transformation. As Lavish sat in his office, reflecting on the past few months, he couldn't help but feel a sense of profound change. The victories were important, but it was the lessons learned along the way that mattered most. He took out his diary and wrote, clarity, honesty, and structure always win. People don't just buy solutions, they buy the confidence that the solution will work for them. And that confidence comes from how well you communicate. Lavish realized that his journey wasn't just about mastering pitches or presentations. It had become a journey of transforming his mindset, simplifying his thinking, and understanding the perspectives of others. He no longer saw himself just as a presenter, but as a better communicator and problem solver. A new role, giving back. A few months later, Lavish joined a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs, where he shared his knowledge and experience. One day, a budding entrepreneur asked him how he had learned everything. Lavish smiled warmly and replied, by learning that simplicity, honesty, and clarity are the ultimate superpowers. This was no longer just a journey to elevate his career. It was about paying it forward and giving others the tools to find their own success. The true victory. His story was not over. It had just begun. As Lavish wrote on the last page of his diary, this entire journey has made me not only a better professional, but also a better human being. The lessons of the 3-minute rule were not confined to his work. They permeated every interaction, every pitch, and even every failure. Lavish thought back to his biggest victory, landing the partnership with the multinational corporation. But he realized that the true victory wasn't just winning the deal, it was the transformation within himself. He had learned to connect with people by blending simplicity, honesty, and storytelling. He understood that every weakness could be turned into a strength, and that the key to impactful communication was authenticity and clarity, sharing the knowledge. Lavish took this knowledge and began to share it in mentorship programs and workshops designed for the new generation of entrepreneurs. He emphasized that people don't want flashy presentations, they want clear, actionable ideas. One day, a young entrepreneur asked him, "Sir, how did you learn all this?" Lavish smiled, his eyes thoughtful. He replied, "To learn all this, I had to leave my ego and accept that I don't know everything." And with that, Lavish closed his diary for the day, feeling more fulfilled than ever. His journey, filled with challenges and triumphs, had not only shaped his career, but had molded him into a better leader, mentor, and individual. The power of simplicity, honesty, and clarity. Lavish reflected on his journey and realized something profound. Every time I accepted my mistakes and learned from them, I moved forward. And yes, simplicity is my biggest strength. For him, the 3-minute rule was no longer just a book. It had become a philosophy that completely transformed his thinking and approach. In his last workshop, he shared his ultimate realization. The real purpose of communication is not to impress people, but to connect with them. When you speak with truth and simplicity, people don't just listen to you, they trust you. And there is no greater asset than trust. Lavish's story was more than just the lessons he learned. It was about how he embraced them, applied them in his life, and used them to empower others. He understood that learning never ends, and that every conversation, every interaction, and every failure holds a new lesson. As he closed his diary, he smiled. His journey wasn't over. It was just another beginning. He told himself, every presentation is a new opportunity. Every story has something new to teach. From that moment on, simplicity, honesty, and clarity became the guiding principles of his life. These values shone through in every part of his career, shaping his success and impact. And that was his real victory. Your thoughts? So friends, that was today's book summary. What did you think? Let us know in the comments, and thank you for listening until the end. This version